I'll never forget the shock of bumping into my husband at a friend's baby shower. It seemed Jessica was unaware that Kyle and I were married, let alone that they had a child together. "I envy how happy you two seem," I said awkwardly, feeling like the odd one out in our once close trio. Jessica beamed. Kyle nodded awkwardly. But I knew the truth. I knew Kyle well enough to know he'd say things like pregnancy isn't an illness, so don't be lazy, offering no help to his pregnant wife. The fact that he would cheat on me with our best friend was unforgivable. My resolve was set. I would make Kyle lose everything. My name is Ashley, a beautician in a cozy regional city where I was born and raised. It's not as flashy as downtown, but it's home with a strong sense of community. Kyle and I were high school classmates, known as the couple everyone expected to marry. When people asked about Kyle, I always knew where he was, which led to teasing about being a good future wife. Jessica, another member of our trio, was always dreaming of going abroad, immersed in music and distant aspirations. She excelled academically and eventually studied overseas. After graduation, our contact dwindled to sporadic emails. Meanwhile, I pursued my passion for beauty, attending vocational school, and joining my family's salon. Kyle attended a local university and joined his family's beauty product business, which partnered with my family's salon, fueling gossip about our relationship. Quiet and reserved, Kyle was the opposite of me, yet we somehow clicked. Our relationship evolved naturally from high school, culminating in marriage without a formal proposal. We bought a spacious house and embarked on our new life. When I joyfully announced my pregnancy, expecting Kyle's happiness, his indifference stung. "Oh, is that so? Aren't you happy?" he replied, absorbed in his phone. Disappointed, I faced a tough pregnancy, forced to take early maternity leave due to health issues. Kyle's lack of empathy surfaced as he cited maternity leave regulations and criticized my reduced workload. "Pregnancy isn't an illness," he'd say callously, expecting me to maintain household chores despite my health challenges. Raised in a household where men didn't do housework, Kyle was clueless about domestic tasks, adding to my frustration. His disregard for my needs and his insensitive remarks about my pregnancy drove a wedge between us. As I navigated these challenges, Kyle's attitude worsened, leaving me feeling isolated and resentful. His habit of belittling me and prioritizing his comfort over my well-being pushed me to a breaking point. I attempted to excuse myself, saying I needed to use the bathroom, but he snapped, "I'm not done talking yet." During his lengthy lecture, I'd barely made it to the bathroom in time. From behind me, I could hear Kyle's mocking comment, "That's so uncool." When we first married, I found Kyle's calm demeanor appealing. But since becoming pregnant, everything seemed to backfire. Instead of supporting me, he compared me to various cases he read about online. That celebrity returned to work immediately after giving birth and looked perfect. "You'll be the same, right?" "I don't know. Don't compare me so easily to such incredible people. We're both human," I replied, feeling the weight of Kyle's high expectations. He easily believed dubious information from the internet, turning our conversations into unpleasant arguments. Around the same time I got pregnant, Kyle started spending less time at home. Arguments like these were part of the reason, but he also began going out at night and on weekends, claiming it was for work. This new behavior was unlike our previous life together and far from the involved father figure society now expects. One night, when Kyle came home late, I decided to confront him. "You've been busy with work recently, haven't you?" "I'm trying to attract new clients." "It's none of your business," he retorted sharply. "But Kyle, have you been drinking? This isn't like you." "This is part of my job now. Stop nagging," he replied loudly enough that the neighbors could probably hear. I could smell alcohol on his breath, a stark contrast to how he had been before. "You never had to drink for work before. What's going on? You wouldn't understand. Basically, you are." His words trailed off into another round of sarcastic remarks, leaving me frustrated and uncertain about our future. "I work hard every day, and all you do is lay around at home. This doesn't make working worthwhile," Kyle accused, his voice filled with frustration. "I'm not just lazing around. I'm quite busy preparing for the birth." I defended myself, struggling to hold back tears. "That's no excuse to neglect housework. You hardly put on makeup anymore. It's like you're giving up on being a woman just because you're pregnant," he continued, his words cutting deep. Holding back tears that threatened to spill, I turned to put Kyle's bag back on the shelf. As I did, a small object fell to the floor with a clink. "What's this?" I asked, picking up the wireless earbuds casually and examining them. They were small, shaped like earrings in a cute pink color that seemed designed to appeal to women. "Don't you dare touch my bag without permission. That's an invasion of privacy," Kyle snapped sharply. "It's not unusual for me to do this, but Kyle, you don't usually use earbuds. Are these someone else's? We should probably return them," I suggested calmly. "That's for me to worry about. Just focus on your housework. Why can't you even get that right?" Kyle's reaction was unexpectedly intense for simply pointing out a lost item. As I opened my mouth to speak further, I felt a dull impact on my stomach. Kyle had kicked me. "Don't forget that you're being supported by me. If you keep interfering, I'll have to reconsider things," he threatened before storming off to his room. Confused and hurt, I couldn't comprehend what had just happened. Tears finally escaped as I stood there, feeling alone and unsure about our future. I sat on the floor, stunned, replaying the recent events in my mind. It didn't make sense why I deserved to be kicked. Kyle's reaction was incomprehensible to me. The next day, for safety's sake, I went to the hospital to check on my stomach. I couldn't bring myself to admit that my husband had kicked me, so I lied, saying I had fallen at home. Fortunately, the baby was fine, but the area where I had been kicked was bruised and sore. Amidst this turmoil, some good news arrived. My best friend Jessica had given birth. I knew she had studied abroad and found a job there, but apparently she had returned to the US. I had hoped to bring Kyle along for a reunion of our close trio, but he was away on a business trip. Reluctantly, I went alone to congratulate her. In her bright hospital room, Jessica lay on the bed with a relieved expression. As I entered, she managed to sit up slightly. "It's been so long. Congratulations on the birth," I greeted her. "Thank you. I actually came back to the US about a year ago but couldn't contact you. I'm sorry. I'm just glad the baby was born safely," Jessica replied, looking more polished and mature than during our student days. Beside her pillow lay the same earbuds I had found in Kyle's belongings. She seemed to notice my gaze. "Oh, these? They're my favorite. I lost one the other day, but my boyfriend found it for me." "Really? What's your husband like?" I asked, curious. "We haven't registered our marriage yet. Actually, he is." Her words were interrupted by a knock on the door. To my surprise, Kyle entered the room. I was too shocked to say anything. "Surprise, right? I'm currently dating Kyle," Jessica announced casually, unaware that Kyle and I were married, innocently smiling at me. "Hey, welcome. Long time no see," Kyle greeted, his nonchalant attitude heightening my confusion. "It's a reunion of our close trio. I started seeing Kyle again after returning to the US. We're planning to get married, but we've been busy with paperwork." "I see. Actually, as you can see, I'm pregnant too," I replied calmly, feeling overwhelmed but determined to protect myself and my child. I pondered the best way to handle the situation. "I must protect this child and myself," I reminded myself. "My husband is away on business now. I really wanted to bring him today, but I couldn't," I added, feeling a pang of regret. "That's a shame. I wanted to meet Ashley's husband," Jessica commented. "It really is a pity, but having a husband like yours who accompanies you is definitely better. My boyfriend hardly helps at all." I glared at Kyle discreetly, but he deliberately looked away. "You two look so happy together," Jessica remarked, oblivious to the tension. Only one left out of our close-knit trio, Jessica, Kyle. "I hope you'll always be happy, no matter what," I said, trying to maintain a composed demeanor. Jessica nodded with a beaming smile, while Kyle nodded awkwardly. "Oh, this is for the baby shower. I heard bids are always useful, so I bought some," Jessica said, changing the subject, offering the gift with a warm gesture. "I even got matching ones for my baby. They're cute." "Thank you," Jessica exclaimed happily. "You must be excited for your baby too, Ashley." "Yes, once I have a healthy baby, we should all go out together," I replied warmly. At the mention of all, Kyle's shoulders twitched. I pretended not to notice and smiled brightly. "By the way, can we take a photo?" Jessica asked suddenly. She held the baby and Kyle stood next to her. I forced a smile and agreed. After the photo, I excused myself from the hospital room. Before I knew it, my breathing became ragged and my shoulders heaved. Beyond the door, I could hear Jessica's excited voice and Kyle's low responses. Leaving the hospital, I rushed home. Opening my phone, I contacted a real estate agent immediately. "Hello, I know this is sudden, but I want to sell my house," I explained urgently. "Yes, you can list it right away. I'll complete the paperwork quickly. Also, could you recommend a moving company? I asked, arranging everything swiftly through the agent's connections. Next, I called Kyle's mother. Due to an urgent situation with Kyle, I'm sending some belongings your way. There will be a lot, so please don't be surprised, I informed her, deciding to erase any trace of our shared home. Kyle had mentioned he would be on a business trip until tomorrow, likely planning to stay elsewhere tonight. Though I wanted to send his belongings directly to his parents' house, I hesitated not to shock my mother-in-law. At least informing her was the least I could do. After finalizing these arrangements, I noticed a series of missed calls from Kyle. In fact, he had been trying to reach me continuously since I left the hospital. Ignoring the calls, I calmly drank water. Then a message appeared. Let's talk things over, just the two of us. But what was there to discuss in this state? Moreover, after being kicked in the stomach, my wariness of Kyle had transformed into deep distrust, and I couldn't bear to hear his voice anymore. Immediately upon arriving home, I began packing. I entered Kyle's room and started stuffing his belongings into boxes. Thankfully, it was the off-season for moving, so I signed up for a plan that included packing assistance. The shipping went smoother than expected, and soon, only my belongings remained. My parents came over promptly upon my request, and we completed the move swiftly. While packing Kyle's room, I stumbled upon something unexpected, an incomplete divorce form. It appeared Kyle had already started the process to leave me for Jessica. Seeing an opportunity, I filled in the remaining sections of the form and decided to keep it safe. Just then, my phone rang. It was my mother-in-law. Ashley, I knew some belongings were coming, but I didn't expect so many. What happened? She asked anxiously. Actually, Kyle has been having an affair. Do you remember Jessica from high school? It seems he had a child with her, I revealed, sensing her shock on the other end of the line. While I sympathized with her, I continued, unfortunately, I have evidence. I sent her the photo I had taken in the hospital room showing Jessica with the baby, with Kyle standing beside them. I don't want to believe it, but it's true. I don't want to believe it either, but it's the truth. My mother-in-law admitted quietly. I'm going to stay at my parents' house starting tonight, I informed her. After trying unsuccessfully to reach Kyle, my mother-in-law seemed troubled. She asked if I knew his whereabouts. Unable to contain my emotions, I blurted out, he's no longer family to me. My mother-in-law seemed to understand my decision. That night, I took my belongings and returned to my childhood home, where I slept peacefully in my old room. The next morning, I received a message from Kyle. Hey, the house is empty and there's a for sale sign up. What's going on? He asked. Don't you understand? Your home isn't there anymore. For now, I've sent your things to your parents' house, I replied, firm in my decision to move forward without him. I'm changing the locks tomorrow, so coming back will be pointless, I informed Kyle firmly. What have you done? Let's talk, at least. I suppose we must. I'll come to your parents' house this afternoon. I'll contact your mother myself, Kyle responded urgently. I quickly ended the call and began preparing to go out that afternoon. Soon, all the relevant parties gathered at Kyle's parents' house. Kyle's parents, my parents, Kyle, and myself. My mother-in-law looked particularly pale but bravely started the conversation. Kyle, is it true that you're having an affair with your friend Jessica? She asked directly. An affair? No, Mom, we just started dating late, that's all, Kyle replied, attempting to downplay the situation. I'm not interested in excuses, and there's a child involved too. It seems you're quite compatible, my mother-in-law retorted sharply. The next moment, she shocked us all by punching Kyle. How could you do this? Ashley is pregnant with your child? How can you face her? She cried out in anguish. It was the first time I had seen Kyle's usually calm and sophisticated mother act like this. A trickle of blood ran from Kyle's nose, but he seemed unaware. Ow, what was that for? It's natural for a child to be born to a couple in love. How can you say such a thing? My mother-in-law continued, her voice trembling with emotion. Intervening in the argument, I spoke up. First of all, why did you even start dating Jessica? Kyle hesitated before answering. I ran into her at the station while I was out on sales calls. She had just returned to the US and was busy with her new job. She had a charm that you don't have. That doesn't sound like a reason to start dating. I've actually liked Jessica since high school, but I thought she was out of my league, so I settled for you, Kyle admitted selfishly, leaving me speechless at his blunt honesty. When I met Jessica again and we talked about the past, I realized she didn't think badly of me. There was no reason not to be together, Kyle added, revealing that he had kept his marriage to me a secret from Jessica. He had considered divorcing me when Jessica got pregnant, but around the same time, meeting at Kyle's parents' house, I had become pregnant too. Kyle didn't have the courage to divorce or the resolve to remarry, so things continued as they were. How can you be so selfish? Aren't you ashamed of juggling two women? Jessica and Ashley are completely different, Kyle's mother exclaimed, her anger palpable. Meeting Jessica again made me realize how unsatisfied I was with Ashley. I plan to remarry Jessica and step up as a man, Kyle responded defensively. Don't joke. I'm ashamed to call someone like you my son, his mother retorted angrily. If that's how you feel, we will sever our parent-child relationship. You're fired from the company too. From now on, live on your own. I don't care. I wondered silently. Kyle had always worked in our small family business. Would he be able to handle a different job? You don't understand anything. The only reason you could work until now was thanks to Ashley's beauty salon, his mother accused. Ashley's salon? That small country shop didn't have much to do with my performance, Kyle argued defensively. The only reason you managed to get any results was because Ashley's salon was promoting our products, you ungrateful person. His father interjected, his disappointment evident. They had been silently listening to the conversation until now. They declared regretfully that they would stop doing business with Kyle's company. It can't be helped. I'll start a new business. I'm still young, and if I study, I can do anything. Jessica will return to work soon after giving birth, so our new life will be secure, Kyle muttered into his smartphone. So he says. Suddenly Jessica's voice loudly exclaimed over the speaker. I had been connected to Jessica via a video call from the beginning of the meeting. Are you stupid? If I had known you were married to Ashley, I would never have dated you. I can't believe I ended up betraying Ashley too. Jessica continued, her disappointment and frustration evident. Your lack of foresight in this conversation is astonishing. Frankly, you have no talent as a business person, Jessica concluded, her tone cutting and final. I contacted Ashley and decided to join the discussion. I'm glad I listened in. I never want to see you again. Wait, don't leave me. Why should I stay with someone as awful as you? Kyle pleaded desperately. I'll raise the baby on my own, but I'll be taking child support, Jessica declared firmly. Kyle seemed to realize there was no convincing her. He turned to me, his face stained with dried blood, and begged, Ashley, I was wrong. Forget everything and let's raise our child together. I refuse to continue a marriage with such a scoundrel. I can't forget the terrible things you've done, I replied coldly, recalling the shock of seeing Kyle in Jessica's hospital room. Don't be so stubborn. Aren't you supposed to be the kind one? Kyle looked at me desperately. Shaking my head slowly, I said, it's too convenient for you to come back to me just because things didn't work out with Jessica. But you'll have trouble raising the child on your own, won't you? I have a profession, and a father like you is more of a hindrance than a help. I'm not foolish enough to cling to a useless man. Having already discussed everything with my parents, who were fully supportive and had connections through their business, I presented the divorce papers I had found in Kyle's drawer. As you can see, I've prepared the divorce papers. All that's left is to submit them. Let's quickly settle the property division and child support. Wait, I have to pay Jessica, and now you too. Kyle's face fell as reality set in. Of course, I'm still your wife after all. But don't think you can neglect Jessica either. We have lawyers ready, I replied firmly. Kyle buried his face in his hands. Suddenly, I felt an unfamiliar pain in my abdomen. Ow, it hurts. At that moment, I realized I was going into labor. The meeting adjourned abruptly, and my parents rushed me to the hospital. Exhausted from the emotional turmoil of the meeting and childbirth, I collapsed into bed and slept deeply. Even when the nurses woke me, I was hardly aware. After being discharged, I returned to my parents' house with my baby. My mother, a discreet beautician, spread the word about Kyle's actions among her clients, primarily housewives. Her few words quickly spread throughout the town. Meanwhile, Kyle attempted to start an online sales company, underestimating the power of personal connections and relying on the internet. However, his abilities fell short compared to the strength of word of mouth. Unable to secure bank funding due to the rumors, his business failed to launch. Another blow came from Jessica, who had recorded the entire confrontation via video call. She edited Kyle's self-centered behavior into a short video and shared it with our high school classmates. As a result, Kyle lost all his friends and any remaining support. Left to fend for himself, Kyle was kicked out of his parents' house and ended up living in an internet cafe, depleting his savings. Struggling to find work and housing as an unemployed man with no fixed address, he eventually moved to a distant area. Kyle managed to find day labor but struggled with unfamiliar physical work. There was no mercy for him. I warned him that missing even one child support payment would lead to legal action for assaulting me while pregnant. The photos I took of my injuries and the medical records from the hospital visit would be substantial evidence. Submitting the divorce papers, I became a single mother almost simultaneously with giving birth. But I was not alone. I found a larger apartment and decided to live with Jessica. The four of us, Jessica, me, and our babies, started a new life together. The children get along like siblings, and Jessica and I, always best friends, grew even closer. With Kyle out of the picture, we supported each other with childcare, making work and personal time manageable. We're planning to make our public debut together when the kids are a bit older. For now, we're enjoying this comfortable life. Hey, why don't you come to Mom's funeral, sis? What? I never thought you were such a terrible person. I was caught off guard as my younger brother's words pierced through the phone line. His tearful voice held no hint of deceit. James, Mom passed away 5 years ago, you know. My name is Jessica, I reminded him gently. I'm a 30-year-old office worker dating a man named Robert. We're starting to get serious, and he's eager to meet my parents. But there's a weight of guilt pressing on me. Both my parents have passed away, having divorced years ago amidst irreconcilable differences. I was just 16 then. After the divorce, I lived with my father, who cared for me deeply. He supported my piano lessons and studies, and I took on household chores in return. Cooking dinner, making rice balls, anything to see his smile of approval. Then came college, where I excelled, much to my father's pride. He encouraged me to visit my mother, who lived with my younger brother James. Big sister Jessica, long time no see. We shared brief moments of joy during those visits. But after my mother remarried, things changed. My husband-to-be wanted me to focus on our life together, which strained my relationship with my previous family. Though I wished them happiness, conflicting emotions swirled within me as I navigated this new chapter of my life. But I don't want to lose the opportunity to see my brother. Can't we just reduce the frequency of our meetings? I'm sorry, but James is entering adolescence and I don't want to confuse him too much. I see, but once we get used to our new life, I'm sure my husband will let us meet. Yeah, I understand. I wasn't entirely convinced, but I didn't want to protest and risk damaging my mother and brother's relationship with their new family. So, I decided to endure it. Years passed. I finished college and landed a job. Yet during that time, I couldn't see my brother or mother. 4 years had gone by, and I couldn't help but wonder why they couldn't spare even a moment to meet me. Perhaps they were leading such fulfilling lives that they no longer needed me. My brother, who was just 11 when we last met, was now 15. I wanted to offer him some encouragement as he prepared for private high school entrance exams. With that thought in mind, I mustered the courage to call my mother. To my surprise, an unfamiliar man answered the phone. Hello, who is this? Isn't this my mother's number? Are you Jessica by any chance? Yes, I am. I'm David, the man who remarried your mother. She's busy right now, so I answered the phone. Oh, I see. Well, it's been 4 years since I last saw them, and I was thinking I'd like to see my brother and mother soon. Really? You haven't seen them? No, I haven't seen them at all. I see. Maybe your mother doesn't want to see you. What? Actually, when I mentioned your name just now, my wife didn't react at all. Is James not around? I at least want my brother to respond to my call. I was thinking that, but James is right next to me. He's just playing a game and not reacting at all. It seems like they've both forgotten about you and adapted to their current lives. They're both living happily, so could you please leave them alone? I'm gonna hang up now, David stated before ending the call. I was left so stunned that I couldn't move for a while after the conversation ended. The thought that my brother and mother might have forgotten about me and were living their lives without me was too much to bear. Seeking solace, I turned to my father for advice. That's strange. Those two love you, Jessica, he reassured me. He tried to reach out to my mother, but her response was firm. Please don't call again. In the end, we couldn't meet or even speak to my mother and brother. Life carried on, and I became increasingly occupied with work. Still, they lingered in the back of my mind. Then, about 3 years after that distressing phone call, I received devastating news. What? Mom? It was a notification informing me that my mother had died in a traffic accident. Rushing to the hospital, I was led to the room where her lifeless body lay. Her peaceful expression made it seem as if she were merely sleeping with her eyes closed. I never imagined I'd see her again like this. Sis, a voice broke through my mourning. James. As I grieved my mother's passing, my brother entered the room. It had been 7 long years since I last saw him, and he had grown into a completely different person. Why didn't you come to see us? He questioned, his tone filled with hurt. Did you start hating me and Mom? Wait a minute, I interjected. It was your stepfather, David, who told me not to see you. Dad would never say something like that, James rebutted firmly. Dad's an amazing person, and I look up to him. He wouldn't say something like not meeting with you, sis. What? My brother's trust in our stepfather, David, was evident. They must have developed a strong bond over the past 7 years. Then, a man who seemed to be David arrived. Hi, it's our first time meeting in person, isn't it? He greeted. Hello. David appeared to be in his early 50s with a determined air about him, as if he could accomplish anything. Despite encountering various company employees in my line of work, he struck me as somewhat cunning. I'm really shocked that my wife passed away so suddenly. The funeral will be held soon, so I'd like both you and your father to attend, Jessica, David informed me. Understood. Though my mind was preoccupied, attending my mother's funeral took precedence. My father and I went together to bid her farewell. The funeral proceeded without incident, but a dispute over the inheritance soon arose. Jessica hasn't seen my wife in 7 years, so could you please give up the inheritance? David proposed. What? Wait a minute, I interjected. Wasn't it David who didn't let me see her? Sis, are you still saying that? How many times do I have to explain that Dad would never do that? James countered. No matter how desperately I pleaded, my brother wouldn't believe me. Oh dear, it seems I've become the villain here, David remarked. Dad's not wrong. Sis is just saying weird things, James asserted. Sis, I don't really understand inheritance, but will you give it up? He pressed. What? I should at least receive the minimum inheritance, right? What would Mom think if she saw you being so greedy about money? I retorted, feeling as though David treated me as if I were money-grubbing. At this point, my father intervened. Wait a minute, my daughter is only claiming her rightful share. Stop making such accusations. Thanks to my father's words, David fell silent. No matter what you say, I'll make sure my daughter gets at least the minimum inheritance. What's this? Are you and Sis conspiring to make things difficult for us? David challenged. That's not the case. This is just a claim of rights, my father clarified. The discussion grew heated, and in the end, I received only the minimum inheritance, but it created a divide between my brother and me. My antagonistic relationship with David, my brother's trusted stepfather, caused this rupture. Finally reconnecting with my brother after so long, only to be met with his disdain, compounded the sadness of losing my mother. As if that weren't enough, more misfortune followed. My father was diagnosed with cancer, given only 1 more year to live. It felt like an onslaught of crushing blows, leaving me asking, why is this happening to me? I spiraled into negativity. But my father, noticing my change, gently spoke to me. Jessica, everyone dies someday. It's not something we can control. I've been happy living with you all this time, and I intend to enjoy the time I have left to the fullest. Dad? In the time that remained, we went on trips and did everything he wanted to do. When he passed away, I was left with an unbearable pain from losing both of my beloved parents. Yet my father's last words echoed in my mind. Look forward and enjoy every moment of life. With his words as my guide, I wiped away my tears and chose to move forward. At my father's funeral, my brother arrived, accompanied by David. This presence fueled my brother's aggression towards me, his focus solely on my father's inheritance. Sis, you forcibly took part of Mom's inheritance, so I'm definitely taking Dad's inheritance, he asserted. I didn't want to engage in further conflict or hostility, so I quietly agreed. Yes, of course, I was planning to give it to you anyway. I responded calmly, making arrangements for the inheritance to be transferred to my brother. Since then, I haven't seen or heard from my brother. It felt awkward reaching out to him, and years passed by. Eventually, I met Robert through a friend's introduction. As our relationship progressed towards marriage, I decided to disclose everything to him about the loss of both my parents and the strained relationship with my only sibling, my brother. Despite knowing all this, Robert still wanted to marry me, and I found myself falling in love with him. As our courtship continued smoothly and we received a marriage proposal, I felt like I was on top of the world. But then, in a sudden twist, I received a call from my brother. "Hello, James," I greeted, surprised and elated to hear from him after so long. "What's up?" "Oh, speaking of which, I have something to tell you too." However, before I could say anything, my brother interrupted me with an accusation that left me bewildered. "Sis, why didn't you come to Mom's funeral? I never thought you were such a terrible person," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "What? I don't think my sister was such a terrible person," I responded, utterly confused by his sudden accusation over the phone. "What's going on? Why are you saying something so nonsensical all of a sudden?" "Nonsensical? Mom's dead, you know?" he retorted, his voice filled with anguish. "Wait, James, calm down," I urged, struggling to make sense of the situation. "How can I calm down? Was this some kind of cruel joke?" he questioned, his voice breaking. "No, it was too harsh for that," I realized, feeling the weight of the truth in my brother's sobbing voice. I took a deep breath, steadying myself before addressing my brother James. "James, Mom died 5 years ago," I began slowly, expecting him to understand. But his response shocked me to the core. "What are you talking about? Mom didn't die back then." "What? What are you saying? You saw Mom's body too, didn't you? We even had the funeral," I countered, confusion clouding my thoughts. His insistence only added to my bewilderment. No, Mom was alive. I lived with her for about 3 years after that." "What? What do you mean?" James's voice trembled with disbelief. "So, I was living with Mom," I tried to explain, struggling to grasp the situation myself. "It's best to go along with the story at times like this," I reasoned, trying to make sense of the apparent disconnect. "Yes, but they said she would die soon without an offering. I gave all the money I earned as an offering," James confessed, his voice heavy with regret. Suddenly, it dawned on me that my brother had been deceived. "What?" At that moment, I realized that my brother had been deceived, but the offering wasn't enough, and Mom died. "James, can you introduce me to the person you've been making offerings to?" I asked urgently, wanting to understand the full extent of the deception. "Of course, you should be saved too, sis," he responded earnestly, leading me to the person who had supposedly rescued Mom. Later, as we entered the office building where counseling was conducted, I felt a sense of unease. "Teacher," my brother called out as we stepped into the private office. And there, to my astonishment, was David. "Wait a minute, you're the one who remarried my mother and became James's stepfather, right? Why is James calling you teacher?" I demanded, my confusion growing. "James and I have a patient-teacher relationship," David explained calmly, though his presence only fueled my suspicion. "What? No, you live with James, right? James even called you Dad," I protested, struggling to comprehend the situation. "Sis, what are you talking about? David is a counselor. Dad died 3 years ago, remember?" James interjected, his voice tinged with concern. Wait, David, are you brainwashing James?" I accused, unable to shake off the feeling of dread creeping over me. "What are you talking about? I've just been listening to him. Before that, I was counseling his mother," David clarified, though his explanation did little to alleviate my growing unease. "What? You deceived my mother too?" I accused, feeling a surge of anger and betrayal. "Sis, don't say such terrible things like deceived," James pleaded, his expression torn between confusion and distress. Jessica seems quite confused. "Well, it's understandable. Losing both parents can often lead to mental illness," David interjected, his tone patronizing. "What are you talking about? You've unconsciously put a stopper in your mind to avoid facing reality. You're suppressing the grief of losing your parents," he concluded, his words sending a chill down my spine. "I can help you release it." "Stop it. I'm already looking forward and living my life." "Really? Aren't you just enduring it?" "I'm not enduring anything. It's better not to force yourself. If you do as I say, Your heart will feel much lighter. Really? Really? James became cheerful that way too, so why not entrust yourself to me? Yes, please. Good girl. Now, sit here and think about your mom and dad. When I place my hands on your head, the sad feelings will magically disappear. How about it? Do you feel lighter? No, I don't feel any lighter. I see. Maybe it's because the offering is 0, so there is not enough power. What? If you really want to get better, you have to make a lot of offerings. Is that so? Yeah, so let's start with an offering of $1,000. $1,000? That's still not enough to be completely healed. You need to make more and more offerings. Is that so? James made offerings too, right? Yes, he's been making offerings ever since he graduated from high school and started working. That's how he was able to find his mother and regain happy days. But the offerings stopped at one point, and his mother really died this time. So, he's reflecting on that and increasing his offerings to be saved. I see. I called out towards the entrance. That's how it is, Robert. As I said that, the door to the room opened, and my fiancé, Robert, walked in. Who exactly are you? David asked, with a suspicious look at Robert, who then handed David his business card. I'm a lawyer. I've been listening to your conversation, and it seems you've been brainwashing James and swindling a large sum of money from him. A lawyer? He's also my fiancé, and we're going to sue you and recover the money. As I said that, David momentarily looked flustered, but then snorted and retorted, I thought you'd say something like that. James was saved by me. There's no fact that I deceived him. I was just providing legitimate counseling, right, James? David asked my brother with a triumphant look on his face. My brother glanced at us and then said, I was deceived by you and forced to contribute a large sum of money. You, James. David's eyes widened at my brother's statement. It seems your brother intends to sue you. Wait, this must be some mistake, right, James? I saved you. Are you going to betray me like this? Teacher, I do think that thanks to you, both my mother and I felt relieved many times. But it's also true that you were gradually brainwashing us, right? In fact, I became unable to make sound judgments because of you. You brought a woman who looked like my mother and made me believe that she was actually alive. And then, you instilled fear that she would die if I didn't make offerings. Moreover, you disposed of all the photos of my mother and me without my noticing and replaced them with composite photos of a fake mother. The pictures were so sophisticated and natural that I naturally believed the fake mother was my real mother. And before I knew it, almost all of my salary from the years since I graduated from high school and started working was taken by you. When I met my sister and saw the real photos of my mother, the brainwashing suddenly broke. That's when I decided to sue you, capturing evidence if you actually demanding an exorbitant amount of money. You betrayed me. David exclaimed, stunned by my brother's revelation. Don't mess with me. You're the one who kept swindling money from me and my mother. You brainwashed us, telling us not to meet my sister and even made us lie that you were our stepfather. My mother died without seeing my sister for years. I'll not only get back the money you took from me, but also the money you took from my mother. You've sucked money from us and enjoyed yourself. Now suffer misfortune. My brother angrily confronted David with such intensity that David stumbled back in surprise. Then we'll see you in court, Robert said, and we left the scene. After that, James sued David under Robert's legal representation. David was ordered to pay back the total amount of $300,000 that he had swindled from my brother and mother. Not only was David ordered to pay compensation, but his outrageous fraudulence became known to his previous patients and their families, and he seems to be in serious trouble due to lawsuits and compensation claims from many people. He had been doing as he pleased for so long that he deserved to be punished. I realized that our relationship had been strained because of the brainwashing, and with everything resolved, the resentment between my brother and me disappeared. My brother also attended my wedding with Robert. I hadn't seen my brother for many years because of David, but now I want to fill that gap by regularly meeting and getting along well with my only sibling. My name is Nicole, and I'm a 34-year-old hairdresser. I've been honing my skills as the chief stylist at the salon owned by my husband Michael, who's just a few years older than me. Our story began through a mutual connection, and I was instantly drawn to Michael's warm and approachable demeanor. 4 years ago, we sealed our bond in marriage. However, there's a significant player in our lives. My husband's mother, Victoria. Divorced during Michael's junior high years, she proudly raised him single-handedly. While I admire her strength, Victoria's unwavering belief in her authority over Michael's life can be suffocating. When we tied the knot, she insisted on asserting her opinions on everything from the wedding arrangements to our choice of honeymoon destination and even the decor of our new home. I had my own dreams for our special moments like the wedding ceremony and honeymoon, not to mention our future abroad. Yet whenever I dared to voice my desires, Victoria swiftly shut them down. Even Michael's attempts to mediate were met with her firm assertion of dominance, often accompanied by the reminder of her role as his mother. It's like tossing pearls before swine, as the saying goes. You don't need such an extravagant wedding dress. Honestly, if you're behaving like this now, I shudder to think about our future together. What kind of upbringing did your parents give you? With those words, she not only dismissed my preferences, but also insulted my parents. It left me anxious about what lay ahead. My parents, ever the voice of reason, suggested, take a moment to reconsider. I'm deeply sorry for my mother's intrusion. Her behavior was uncalled for, but I am committed to building a happy family with Nicole. I'll do whatever it takes. Please will you bless our union? Michael's apology was sincere, and in that moment, both my parents and I felt assured that he would stand by me in the years to come, and so we decided to proceed with the marriage. From the wedding ceremony to our new home, every decision was dictated by my mother-in-law's preferences. At home, my own mother advised, sometimes it's best to concede now for a better future. I understand you're trying to maintain harmony with your mother-in-law, but by yielding now, you're actually positioning yourself to collect on her debt in the future, leveraging her advice. Reluctantly, I acquiesced, but now, 4 years later, I rue that decision more deeply than the ocean and loftier than the mountains. Michael, can we discuss something about work? I have a junior chamber meeting tonight. Yesterday was a shopping district gathering, and today's another meeting. Last week was filled with dinners and social events. When do we have time to sit down and talk? Isn't every event part of your business? I'm not criticizing. You sound like you're complaining. Now that we have 3 stores, it's only logical that we discuss various aspects of management, isn't it? I have entrusted everything regarding the stores to you, Nicole. Your one commendable trait, without any formal education or prestigious family background, is your talent as a hairdresser. Thus, it's only natural for you to focus on boosting sales, right? So why do you act like you need my input? Doesn't that seem odd? Here we go again. 4 years have passed since we launched our hair salon business from scratch. With the successful opening of our 3rd store and plans for a 4th by year-end, it's a significant milestone. However, as our business expands and Michael garners praise as a young entrepreneur, he increasingly regards me with disdain. I can handle him commenting on my education and background, but his constant belittling, criticizing everything from my appearance to my fashion sense, and even comparing me to rival stylists is just too much. What's worse, if I have to postpone a task he's asked for or don't respond to his messages right away, he gives me the silent treatment. During these times, he stays out late, disregards the meals I've prepared, and ostentatiously opts for takeout or convenience store sandwiches and coffee. He spends more time at his mother's place, even taking baths there. At first, I didn't know how to break through his silence. I kept cooking and preparing everything as if he would come home hungry and tired, even though I knew he wouldn't. I'd stay up late, anxiously waiting for him to return, uncertain of when he'd be back. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law would launch her verbal attacks. I always knew you weren't good enough for Michael, but I never imagined you'd be this incompetent. Why is he ignoring me? What have you done? Do you really have no idea? It's unbelievable. Are you mad at me for something I did? If Michael told you something, please tell me. It's pointless to talk to someone who's clueless about their own flaws, isn't it? With a laugh, she leaves me without an answer, after enduring his silent treatment for a while, just when I'm about to lose my patience. I'm home. Oh, I'm starving. What's on the menu tonight? He strolls in casually, as if nothing had happened earlier. I'm relieved he's speaking to me, but deep down, I dread being ignored again. Unconsciously, I find myself bending over backward to please Michael, catering to his every mood. It wasn't until Rebecca, a new stylist who joined the company this spring, pointed it out to me one day that I realized the extent of it all. That particular day, Michael was, as usual, ignoring me, skipping meals and remaining silent. Not wanting the food I had prepared to go to waste, I packed his leftovers into a lunchbox and brought it to the store. While I was eating it for lunch, Rebecca approached me. "Hey, Nicole, did you make that lunchbox yourself?" Yeah. It's just some leftovers from yesterday, though. I don't mean to pry into personal matters, especially as a newcomer, but do you realize that Michael seems to be controlling you?" "What do you mean by control? What are you getting at?" "I might be overstepping, but isn't Michael completely ignoring you right now?" "Yeah, he is." I had a feeling something was off. I noticed him chatting and laughing with everyone else in the staff room but completely ignoring you. And that incident where he rudely brushed off your hand when nobody was looking, it was clear as day. And then there's that lunchbox, filled with just grilled mackerel and meat and potatoes. It's obvious you just packed last night's dinner leftovers, right? It's a far cry from your usual colorful, well-balanced lunches. After Rebecca's observations, memories of my mother's similar experiences flooded back. She went through the same ordeal before divorcing my biological father. Hearing Rebecca's story, I learned that her parents split during her freshman year of high school, with her father often subjecting her mother to the same silent treatment as Michael. It all began with trivial things, gradually escalating until it seemed like a switch had been flipped and he completely shut her out. My mother endured countless tears. I see. In time, she began seeking my father's approval in everything, her once bright smile turning submissive. It was agonizing to witness. Rebecca explained that Michael's silent treatment was a tactic to control me, leaving me worried and insecure while he maintained a position of dominance, smirking all the while. Think about it. In a healthy relationship, if your partner is upset, you'd be concerned and hurt too. But people like Michael, they actually relish in seeing their partner distressed and vulnerable. It's sickening. After Rebecca's candid insight, I found myself losing the urge to panic as I once did, even amidst Michael's moodiness and his habit of ignoring me or my mother-in-law's persistent prodding. Instead, viewing the situation through that lens, I began to see only Michael's immaturity, his overwhelming self-centeredness, and my mother-in-law's unrelenting malice, with no attempts to rein him in. But it seemed they didn't appreciate my newfound perspective. The chilling silence from both Michael and my mother-in-law gradually became routine. He scarcely came home anymore, and when he did, he'd seclude himself in his room. He stopped appearing at both the store and the company, leaving me to handle everything alone. Then, on a day like any other, a rare day off for the store, I decided to thoroughly clean our house for the first time in ages. Usually I relied on the Roomba and Brava, but with the pleasant weather, I figured I'd tackle every nook and cranny for a change. Lost in thought, I began wiping the windows while my favorite music played from my smartphone. That's when Michael and my mother-in-law silently entered the house, unlocking the door with a click as they settled onto the living room sofa. As my husband and mother-in-law sat there, I decided to quickly brew some tea. "What an inconsiderate wife you are. But can't we bid farewell to this type of wife soon? It'll be a breath of fresh air." That's what they remarked as I reluctantly prepared the tea and set it on the sofa table, feeling bewildered. "You see, Michael is expecting a child now, so it's time for you to step aside and make a swift exit. We'll give you a grace period of about 2 weeks to vacate this apartment. And naturally, you'll need to resign from your job as well, without any severance pay, of course." That's what they declared. Michael is having a child? Does that mean he's been unfaithful? And I'm being asked to leave. I'm losing my job with no severance pay either. Though we were in a silent standoff as a couple, my mind raced with questions upon hearing this sudden news, struggling to process it all. "The next wife will be quite different from you. She hails from a wealthy family, graduated from a prestigious women's college, and then trained in the beauty capital, Paris. You simply can't compete with her, so it's best to accept it now." "Ha! She's 3 months pregnant, and I'm eager to provide her with security as my wife soon. Indeed, I'm looking forward to it. Without a doubt, a wonderful child will be born." They uttered whatever they please. "So, if she's 3 months pregnant, does that mean the child is a product of infidelity?" "Yeah, and?" Emily and I just met in the wrong order. We were truly connected by the red thread of fate. "So, you want me to leave because you want to marry your supposed soulmate now?" That's been the gist of it. You're a bit slow on the uptake. As I watched Michael and my mother-in-law's nonchalant demeanor, a headache began to throb at my temples. Finally, I mustered the strength to request some time alone to contemplate, asking them to leave. It seems it takes time to grasp things with a scattered mind like yours. We understand, they replied before retreating to my mother-in-law's quarters. Left alone, I found myself unable to resume cleaning and instead sank onto the floor. Yet amidst the dimness, I noticed my smartphone's screen illuminating with an incoming call. It was from Rebecca. Rebecca? Oh, Nicole, are you at home right now? Yeah, I am. With my brief response, Rebecca announced she was on her way over and promptly ended the call. About half an hour later, Rebecca arrived, her hands full with bulging eco bags. Sorry for barging in. I grabbed some random food and drinks for us, she announced cheerfully. After excusing herself to wash her hands, she swiftly arranged the deli food she brought onto the table. She fetched glasses from the kitchen, poured some craft beer, her newfound favorite, and declared, "Let's dig in before it gets cold," while handing me a spoon. Following her lead, I began to eat, savoring the fluffy omelette rice that filled my mouth. Tasty, isn't it? This place makes fantastic omelette rice, she remarked with a bright smile. I've brought a variety of things, so please take your time and enjoy them. It dawned on me that I had only had coffee and bread for breakfast, hardly constituting a proper meal. Despite being emotionally numb until then, hunger gnawed at me. It was a realization that struck me for the first time. We ate in silence for a while, and as we began to sip our beer, Rebecca brought up the safety group email from the boss, mentioning my departure from the store at the end of the month. I confided in her about my mother-in-law and Michael's demand for a divorce, followed by my decision to resign from the store. Rebecca fell silent for a moment upon hearing my response, but then she looked me straight in the eyes and asked, "What do you want, Nicole? I mean, what do you truly desire? Not what they dictate you should do. It's your life, Nicole. You're the one who decides which path to take. You should steer towards what you want." Those words from Rebecca brought an unexpected clarity to my heart. Let's get a divorce. There's not a single reason why I should remain with Michael and his family. I want a divorce. I want to start afresh, I replied resolutely. Michael had given me a 10-day grace period, but once I set my plans in motion, everything proceeded smoothly. With few personal belongings, I swiftly packed them into boxes provided by the moving company. I entrusted Rebecca with handling my belongings at the store, preferring not to face Michael until everything was settled. Simultaneously, I engaged a lawyer recommended by an acquaintance to draft documents demanding alimony and property division from Michael. After several property viewings, I signed a contract for a new place. Once the move was complete, I had the lawyer send documents to my mother-in-law. Shortly after the letter arrived, my inbox flooded with line messages and emails from both my mother-in-law and Michael. Deciding to address matters formally, I proposed a meeting at the lawyer's office. As I waited at the lawyer's office, my mother-in-law, Michael, and a young woman entered, all wearing smug smiles. When the lawyer inquired about the woman's identity, my mother-in-law spoke up, introducing her as Emily, who would soon become Michael's wife after our divorce. They appeared delighted. Unfazed, I simply asked if they would agree to our demands. Without hesitation, they agreed, viewing it as severance payment. "Consider it compensation for your future," Michael added kindly. They handed over the specified amount in cash, sealed in a bank envelope. I completed my section of the divorce papers, stamped them, and handed them over, bringing the process to an end. As we parted ways, I made it clear that I would not assist them in any way in the future, no matter what happened. "So, this is your last desperate plea." Okay, I get it, you're upset. No need for the sarcasm," Emily retorted before they all exited the office, laughing. These days, I'm thriving as a top stylist at a bustling salon in the city center. Rebecca, who's been by my side since last month, is the same Rebecca who helped me see the truth during that crucial moment at the lawyer's office. I wasted no time in finding a new job, leveraging my past accolades and online recognition to secure a position swiftly. Thanks to this, I can live comfortably without relying on the consolation money or property division. Plus, I've started seeing someone I met at a joint training session with the sister store of my current workplace. Each day feels remarkably liberating and stress-free. So, when's the next date? Hey, don't tease your elders. Rebecca stayed on at Michael's salon for a while after I left. Ultimately, I convinced her to quit immediately. My decision was twofold: to safeguard Rebecca's reputation as a newcomer. avoiding any perception of impatience or lack of cooperation, and to shield her from any potential targeting by Michael and his mother, knowing she was still my friend. Reluctantly, Rebecca remained at the salon, and from what she's told me, the aftermath of Michael, his mother, and Emily was akin to a roller coaster drama. Emily strutted into the salon after my divorce, brimming with confidence as the new top stylist and field manager, but her reign was short-lived, lasting only a single day. The male staff member who had previously worked under me turned out to be Emily's classmate. Unaware of this, Emily made a grand entrance at the salon, accompanied by Michael, boasting about her Parisian training. "Wow, Emily, I thought you must be some extraordinary talent since you claim to have returned from Paris. But here you are," Thomas remarked. Thomas, what are you doing here?" Emily asked, taken aback. "I could ask you the same. I'm genuinely surprised. You were always struggling with the written tests, constantly getting reprimanded by the teacher. How did you, Emily, who barely made it through, end up in Paris?" "That's not true, is it?" "Don't make up stories, Thomas," Emily countered defensively. Well, don't you need a French hairstylist license to work in Paris? When did you suddenly become fluent in French like a native speaker?" Thomas persisted. "Well, I studied at university, didn't I?" "University? Wow," Emily replied, somewhat flustered. The Emily who once claimed to struggle with English during elective French conversations at beauty school found her disguise completely unraveling. A heated argument ensued between Emily, Michael, and Emily's mother-in-law, who rushed onto the scene. Things escalated, leading to a call to the police. The ensuing chaos prompted staff members to leave one by one, draining the salon of its vitality. Customers began to trickle away, and soon, the business hit rock bottom. Forced to shut down 2 of their stores, they attempted to salvage what they could at the original location, but it was too little too late. Last month, they were forced to close down completely. That must have been incredibly challenging. It was, but because of that, I was able to present my departure from the company as due to business circumstances, making the job interview process here much smoother. I'm glad we're working together again, but why did you choose this salon? Naturally, it's to learn directly from Nicole's expertise. Got it. I'll make sure to train you thoroughly. Sometime after Rebecca changed jobs, a letter arrived from Michael and his mother, delivered through the lawyer handling our divorce. It seemed they had no other means to reach me after I severed all communication, and even my parents staunchly refused contact. The letter droned on about how they had been duped by Emily, revealing that she wasn't pregnant after all, and that her entire background was fabricated. Emily had absconded with everything valuable, leaving Thomas in the lurch shortly after they lost the salon and the apartment they had used as collateral. The letter concluded with a plea for my help, painting me as their only hope in their time of need. After skimming through the letter, I promptly called the lawyer who had passed it on to me. "Please just let them know I'm not interested. There's no need to relay any more messages from them." And so, as Rebecca had assured me before, my life, charted in the direction I desired, was flourishing. I vowed never to allow another man to dictate my fate.